Okay, so here we are. I'm going to set up this picture and show you guys how to edit Forza photos. Following this workflow, you can edit just about any other Forza photo, in-game photo, or real-life car photo. So just a disclaimer so this video can stay up. I'm not a professional. I just have a car. I have a lot of friends with cars. I like to shoot cars and edit photos. It's just one of the things I like to do. So I decided a while ago when I was playing Forza to see if I can transfer any of my editing workflows into Forza screenshots. So I practiced a little bit this year and they work. So I'm going to explain some of the concepts and the theory that I do, and you'll be able to do this in about 20 minutes. So that's the goal. We're going to try to get done in about 20 to 30 minutes. But once you watch a couple of these videos and understand the principles here about what's going on, you'll be able to replicate it and edit your own photos. So today I'm using Luminar 4. However, you can use any photo app. These skills transfer into just about any photo app. The thing what you have to do is just find the setting that I'm doing in your photo app. So you can use the Lightroom app, you can use the mobile Lightroom app, you can use Luminar, you can use Photoshop. Just about any app will work, and some are for pay, some are for free. What's going to end up happening is maybe at some point you might come across a setting that you have to pay for, or the app might not have it. So ask around for different apps. What are the best free apps, or what are the better apps, or the least expensive apps in there? So I have a few that I use to edit photos. But again, these principles are going to transfer over into just about any application. All right, so I pulled up this car. I shot this a while ago. I really like this photo. I was trying to get a reflective shot in the water. So a couple of things going on with the photo is you have to think about the photo in general, about what you want to accomplish a little bit. So I do want to brighten up the photo just a little bit and make the car pop and come out. And also, the wrapped hood has a blue hint, and it's tinted just slightly blue. So I do want to make it more look like a flat black. So always look at your photo, and this one is actually would be considered a cloudy day. So I do want to brighten it up, and I'm going to make it look a little warmer and cleaner. I'm also going to bring out the body lines in the car, and as you can see right here where the grill is, there's not much detail, and I'm going to bring out some of the detail over here. So the first thing you should do is look at your car and figure out what you want to do with it. Thinking about the day is very important. So this applies to real life. Whenever I go out and shoot, I think about the day. I try to remember what it was like, whether it was cloudy, whether it was sunny, whether it was cold, whether it was hot, because all that can transfer into the way your photograph looks. So first thing you want to do is grab your photo from Forza Motorsport. And if you don't know how to do that, just look up how to take screenshots on your console or your PC using Forza, and then download the photograph from Forza. So you want to get the best quality photo as possible. If you're doing this in real life, you want to shoot in RAW. So just change your mobile phone camera to shoot in RAW. Now the photo in RAW is not going to look anything like a JPEG photo. It's going to look very washed out and very bland compared to a JPEG photo. But that's okay. It's going to have more information in there that we can work with later. So for example, just grab your photo from Forza Motorsport. They're going to have the highest quality. Don't try to do this taking a picture from your TV screen. All right, so first thing you're going to do is we're going to talk about exposure. So find exposure in your settings. It's over here in my light settings. Exposure is basically how light or how dark the picture is. So for example, if I bring the exposure up, the picture is going to become very washed out. If I bring the exposure down, the picture is going to look very dark. Now I have a tendency when I edit, I like to edit very dark pictures. So my pictures always look on the darker side. That's just my personal preference. You'll come up with a style that you end up liking most times. It may not be everybody else's style, but that's your style, and that's okay. So one of the things I like to do is I end up actually underexposing a lot of my photographs. Now, how do I know what I'm looking for when I do something like this? So as I'm moving the slider, it's visual. what I want to do is take note over here on the rims and a little bit on the grill. They're the darkest points, and over here inside the cabin. So as I'm moving this stuff, I want to bring it down just so I lose some detail, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that detail back out. So underexposed photos are way easier to work with than overexposed photos. So if you ever have a choice, make the photo look a little bit darker, and you can always fix that later on. An overexposed photo is going to be more problematic to get it to look good. So here we are. I just dropped the exposure just a little bit. It's -40. Now don't try to do my numerical values. You have to look at your photo. When I first started, I said to myself, what are good settings to edit cars? Each photograph at different times of day in each car are very different. So you have to look at this. So what I wanted to do is I'm just washing out and hiding out some of that black, but I'm going to bring that out. So I want to make sure that when I bring this down, I don't entirely lose those details. I want to see a little bit of the stuff in the dark as I bring it down, but I do want to bring it down. And the object here is that I want to get the car to be the focal point. So I'm going to bring out the colors in the car without bringing out the surrounding area. So that's why I bring down the exposure here. Okay, so now let's talk about contrast. Contrast is, what is your black point, what is your white point, and it's bipolar. So you're trying to find what is the darkest black and what is the brightest white in the photo. So if I bring this up, what's going to do, it's going to make something really bright and really black. So it's going to be an extreme. And notice when I do that, that hood starts to become more blue, and we don't want to do that. As I bring it down, I lose contrast, so everything is going to look a little bit more washed. I'm going to get grays. So I'm not going to get like a true black, and I'm not going to get a true white. What happens though, the grill does come in, which is good, but that's not the overall effect that we want that's happening in the picture. So sparingly, what I'm going to sit here and do is I'm going to bring up the contrast. So I want to get a darker point, and I want to get a brighter white in there. So there's not much white to work with. So again, here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the grill. I'm looking at the rim over here. And I'm bringing this up until I'm just about losing some detail. And what's the detail I want? I want to see the rim. I want to see the tire separation from inside the rear wheel well. I also over here want to see the grill, and I want to see some separation in here. So contrast just up slightly. It's going to depend on your photograph and what you can start to see with your eye. Because here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring those back out and fix those, but we're just trying to darken out the photo so that we can create focal points. It's okay to lose some detail, but you don't want to lose all detail. But I like to lose some detail. I like to make things disappear in there because I like to have some foreground and some background info. Alrighty, now highlights is the next thing. Highlights basically, you rarely ever boost unless it's really, really dark. You rarely ever boost the highlights unless it's really dark, or you lower the highlights if you shot on a super sunny day and you end up getting very reflective pieces onto the car. So generally, in most cases, you never raise it unless it's super dark. So as you see, raising it here is really have very little or no effect on it. And as I bring it down, it really doesn't have very little effect on it. So for most of the time, you can leave your highlight slider alone unless you want to bring out a white point. All right, let's talk about shadows. In this piece here, we have the wheel wells are darker than the tires there, so that's good. We want to keep that, but we also want to try to bring out some of the details over there on the tires and the wheels. Also on the grill, we want to try to bring out some of that detail and a little bit of detail out in the cabin. So shadows is usually a time where you'll want to boost in there. As I bring up the shadow piece here, I'm getting a brighter piece, and that's bringing up everything in the photograph. But that's okay. We could go back later and we could underexpose again. So this is why I usually start with an underexposed photo, because I want to try to get some of these details out. So what am I looking to do here? Probably the rim is going to be my best piece here to look to see that wheel. I want to get the details of that wheel a little bit, and I want to get some of the details in the grill and in the cabin. So the shadows went up pretty high because I'm trying to illuminate very dark pieces in there. So by doing that, I'm illuminating the whole piece, but that's okay. These are first time pass adjustments. I can always go back later and adjust my other settings. So I'm definitely going to bring the illumination down of the exposure later, but I did get those artifacts in there and the details that I want to in this grill. Now it might be a little hard to see in the video, but later I can even post the final image or the before and after, and we can check it out. All right. So my software has changes. I can see before and after. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys so far. Here's before and here's after. So this is kind of a lighter green. I think it's a lime green what ends up happening here. And by making some adjustments, I'm definitely getting a brighter green in there. That's a flatter lime green and definitely a more iridescent green too coming out. All right, now that we have the basics, what we're going to do is start talking about color. So I dial in my white and black points, my shadows, and my bright points first, and then we start working with color. So I can take and shift the color of the car by following and finding the right hue. I like that car. I'm not going to touch that hue in there, but later I'm going to show you how to get that blue out of that hood and make it look a little bit more flat black. That's what we want to do in there. First thing we're going to do is push the color up just a little bit and saturate it. So this is going to be how rich the color is. And I can desaturate the car and I can really saturate that car. So what I did is I just clicked on a green hue and I can bring up that color of that car. So I can dial in how rich I want that color of that car. Now be careful here because you could do things like really saturate that and change the hue of that, and what you're looking to do is try to get somewhere in that piece of what you want to do just for that one color. So just watch that. So I'm only going up like incrementally one, and here's the difference. So that's the original, that's my edited. So not much, doesn't take much when you're playing around with these sliders. All right, let's talk about luminance here. Now, as I bring the luminance up, this is going to make that green brighter, and by doing that I'm going to lose some of the body lines. So in general, your luminance should be way under what you're doing for your saturation. Since I didn't really move the saturation much up more, it's not a big increment. They're going to be about equal. But in general, as you raise the saturation up on a picture, your saturation should usually always be higher than your luminance. If you bring the luminance up too high, it's going to create these unnatural colors in there and things of that nature, and not good. It just doesn't really look well. So in general, your luminance is usually lower than your saturation. But again, we didn't really saturate this picture much, so it's going to be around in the same variable in there. And this is my before and after. So that's before, that's after, very subtle, but that's what we're looking to do, just subtle changes into the picture. Okay, so here's the deal with the hood. The hood here has a blue hint and tint. So what I want to do is I'm going to change down and lower probably that saturation and maybe some of that luminance on the hood. So as I start to dial in that hood, if I go up higher and saturate it more, it's going to get that blue hint to it, and I don't want that. It's not a blue, it is really a flat black. So I'm just going to dial it down just a little bit to take that edge off and get that blue tint out of there. Now if I bring that luminance up, it's going to wash it, but if I bring the luminance down, it's also going to make it just a little bit more darker, a little more natural. And by doing that too, I have to watch around the pillars because I'm going to change the presence of the pillars on the vehicle too, but that's okay. So we're going to bring it down just a little bit. We could always go back now on our shadows and our exposure and fixing these pieces. All right, so this is that's before, blue tint, to the hood, that's after, and color. That's all you really need to do. Really, really small changes. They go a long way. You never really want to do these vast changes and dial in everything somewhat perfect the first pass. The first pass is just a first pass. You get into the ballpark. What you can do is after you go through these settings, you go back and now make some minor changes. All right, second thing I want to do here is I'm going to start talking about details. So we want to bring in some of these body lines. The photograph by itself is soft in nature, so that gave that depth of field look in there. So I'm going to bring in some detail here. I'm going to go to the details enhancer. All right, and then what I'm going to do is start with the large details. So think of the large details as mostly being the body lines. There's a large details. Now you may have just one slider. It's called structure. So you can bring that in, and as you do that, you're going to balance between large, medium, and small details. So raise your structure up at this point if you have that, or you have a sharpen. You can just bring your sharpen, and it might say sharpen large, medium, and small. So we're looking either for structure, we're looking for a term details, or we're looking for sharpen. Any one of these settings will do whatever you have on there. I'm going to start with my large details, and as I bring that up, I'm going to be dialing in some of these body lines. So the bumper here is soft. As I bring that in, it's going to be sharpening in that bumper just a little bit. As I come into my medium details, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to get some more of the body separation. So these lines here, the panels, that's going to help me bring out some of my panels in there. So as you see here, I'm bringing in the panels, and I'm going to bring that in just slightly there. And now the small details are exactly that. It's going to bring in any of the real small details and things like that of my car. So watch the lights. As I bring this in, it's going to crisp up those lights right there. Okay, so it was soft to begin with, and now I sharpen them in. As I click that, that's the soft picture, that's the before, that's the after. Before, after. So definitely crisp up all those lines, brought those body lines in, and now we can see that stuff. So what ends up happening is when you bring in details, you end up bringing noise into the photograph, and that's because if it's a low light situation, the camera has trouble reproducing a lot of that information. So it creates this background noise that you'll see in the picture, and it looks like static, or it looks a little funny. So there is a little static here in the water. Obviously this is a screenshot, so it's going to create some noise because it's not going to be a real picture. But in low light situations you will get noise, and when you bring up those details, it may amplify that noise. So somewhere in your settings you'll probably have a soften or denoise or something to that effect in there. So what the luminosity denoise is you can dial in if there is artifacts or static in light and dark areas in here. So the way to do this is to bring it up and focus on an area and see if you make changes there. So as I bring this up, it's softening up the water here, and then I have to make sure that overall it's not softening up any other parts on my photograph because I worked really hard to dial them in. So I don't really see it other than it cleaning up some of the background and the reflection there. That's what I want. Color denoise, as I bring that in, that'll allow me to find a hue. So on some of the body panels towards the back, if I start to get a lot of artifacts, what I can do is I can zoom in on those body panels and change a denoise and watch it. And as I bring the slider up, that static or those artifacts will start to disappear. I don't really need to do a lot here, so I can leave it as is if I wanted to, or I can play around and go through the photograph in there. I'm not too concerned, it's water, so generally if there's a setting that you don't have to do, don't do it, because what's happening is as you're changing the structure of the picture, you're adding file weight to the picture. So it's a good idea is if the setting's not really doing anything, take it off. Don't do anything with it in there. All right, let's take a look here. Now there's a few other things that I didn't talk about in the beginning, and I left that on purpose here. This is my photograph. Let me zoom in and zoom down. Let's go back to light. It's white balance. There is a color temperature when you shoot a photograph. And in wintertime or cloudy days, it gives the photograph a look of blue. On the warmer or a sunny day, it gives a photograph of a look of orange. And so remember I said in the beginning, think about the day and what you want to portray here. This is definitely an overcast day, and I can make it look winter or more overcast by adjusting my temperature slider. So as I bring that down, I'm going to get a blue tint throughout the photograph. As I bring that up, I'm going to get a warmer tint. Now you have to be real careful about changing the color temperature in your photograph, because it looks cool here. Then when you export it out and you look at another screen, it can significantly have this orange tint overall to the photograph. And if that's the look you want, that's okay. But be careful, because you can make things look really, really blue or really, really orange. So here, if you think about the day, do I want to keep it neutral, right? Do I want to keep my photograph looking neutral, or do I want to say that it was a warmer, sunnier day from the original? So I just brought that up incrementally, and it's going to create some warmer tones on the photo. So that's the before. That's the after. So you can definitely see the color temperature changing. This is blue, so this definitely looks like I shot it on a cloudy day. This looks like I shot it on a little sunnier day. So I do like that. I think I'm going to hold there. So I brought my color temperature up. Tint, I never mess with. I rarely ever change the tint in the photograph on there. You can do that after you change the color temperature, but I wouldn't suggest really messing with that. That's really going to change it to give yourself a different tint, and it can look funny. It looks good sometimes when you're editing, but when you export it out and come out, it just doesn't look right. All right, so this is a before and after. So this is the blue on the left. This is my before photograph, and that's my after right there. So I'm going to take that off again. So that's after and before, and that's after. So depending on what you want to do to the photograph, I went through the whole gamut and all the settings on here. But if you didn't want to sharpen the photo and you wanted to leave it soft, you can take out those enhancements and those details enhancers and leave the photograph soft in there. So that's it.